move from this scratch sound to this sound. If you want to get seamless, beautiful violin tone, this series was designed for you. One of the strengths of the students in my studio is the ability to pull out beautiful full tone. This is due to a set of simple exercises that, when practiced over time, produce the habits that create this good tone. I'm excited to share these exercises and practice habits with a broader audience. The first thing to understand is that the violin is very much a physics-based instrument. There are two ways of pulling out a big sound on the violin. The first one is to hold on tight and press. Obviously, this is what we want to avoid. Instead of this, what we want to do is hang arm weight into the string and pull sideways. These two differ vastly in terms of their mechanics and in terms of the sound that they get out of the instrument. Now, why is the first one bad? Well, the main reason is that there is a lot of tension in the system. And if there's one enemy of violin technique, it's tension. Everything we do in this series will be centered around eliminating tension and using natural forces of gravity and arm weight to create our tone rather than pressure. In order to pull the string, we need to exert a certain amount of force downward in order to get enough friction to pull the string side to side. If we don't have that downward force, then we end up getting a skate sound with the bow. Once I have arm weight engaged in the string, it's a simple matter of pulling side to side at the proper bow speed in order to get a good sound. You'll notice that because I wasn't holding on tight, there was a lot of flexibility in my fingers, which allowed my fingers to act as shock absorbers as I would change the bow and not get a clipped or a scratchy sound. In order to be successful, we should start by building a flexible and balanced bow hold. Even if you're a more advanced player, I would recommend not skipping through this part because I've seen many advanced players play with a less than optimal bow hold, and even the most advanced players can always benefit from returning to basics, as I often do, and making sure that everything is working here. The way I teach the bow hold is to not dictate exactly where every finger goes, particularly because everybody's hand is shaped slightly differently. There are some guideposts that will help us to find the right spot, however. I'll start by showing you those guideposts in the position of the hand, and then I'll show you on another player how I would help them to find their proper bow hold. I start with a relaxed arm, and the only somewhat unnatural thing that I do with this arm is that I do what's called pronation or wrist turn. It's the motion of checking your watch, and this is the position that we'll be in when we play the violin. After this, I want to lift the bow up into the hand until this hand is taking some of the weight of the arm. And so it'll feel quite heavy for this hand, and it'll lift it up until my weight is kind of hanging by this hand. And then the things that I'm watching out for as I'm positioning my bow hold are I want this middle finger to be right in between the rubber grip and the frog. And then I'm lining up my pinky to be on top of the stick. And then the index finger, I want to contact the stick in between. You can see where my finger is actually a little indented, in between here and there. Right here is where the bow goes, in between those two knuckles. Then I'm also positioning the corner of my thumb to go in the corner of the bow of the rubber grip here. So the corner of it touches the rubber grip, and then the back part of it touches the frog. Those are the 4 markers that I'm looking for. Pinky on top, index finger in between these 2 knuckles, middle finger lining up in between the rubber grip and the start of the frog, and then the corner of the thumb where the nail begins, going into the corner of the bow here. And that's the proper bow hold. Why do I teach the bow hold in this way instead of placing specific markers where you should put every finger on the bow? I do it because it much better imitates the feeling of actually pulling out a beautiful sound with hanging arm weight rather than gripping the bow tightly with your fingers. We start off by just grabbing the arm, and Kate, just try and be as limp as a fish and hang all of your arm weight into my hand and don't support it yourself. If this ends up being tricky for you to do, you can try and drop the arm, and if the arm doesn't just automatically drop on its own, that means you're holding up some of your own weight. So Kate's doing a great job of hanging her arm weight into my hand. The only somewhat unnatural thing that I do is to pronate the wrist. Then I'm going to bring the bow underneath the hand, and I'm going to lift up her weight using the bow. So I'm going to take the arm weight from this hand and transfer it into this hand. And so now this hand is feeling very, very heavy. I've got all of her arm weight over here. You'll notice also that when I'm lining this up, I'm doing it according to all of the things we talked about, the 4 points to watch out for. So the index finger is in between those two knuckles. The pinky's on top of the bow. The middle finger is in between the rubber grip and the frog. And then Kate, bring the corner of the thumb up to the corner of the bow. And then I turn it to vertical. And then I hand over responsibility to support the bow over to Kate. And that's the perfect bow hold for Kate's hand. After you've gotten to this perfect bow hold, you want to do this about 20 times a day. Just get really, really comfortable finding this position until it's just absolutely automatic. So I'll show it a little bit faster. Relaxing the arm, taking the arm weight, giving a little bit of pronation, lifting the bow up into the hand so that the fingers are nice and curled, nice and relaxed, and it's really heavy. Feeling the arm weight get transferred over to my right hand. Then touch with the thumb. Finding softness and relaxation. Perfect bow hold. Something to watch out for when you're first trying to do this, it can actually be quite difficult for some students to figure out how to hang arm weight into the bow. And in particular, when you replace the bow underneath there to hang the weight in the bow. One thing to help this is you can actually hang the arm weight on the bow beforehand and just make sure that you're keeping your wrist pronated. And then I can gradually sort of move the bow towards the bow hand. The closer I get to the bow hand, the trickier this becomes, but at least it's a little bit of a progression in terms of hanging arm weight. Then as you go all the way over, making sure you can still maintain that arm weight. And it's really critical that Kate continues to be pronated in order for this to work. Touching with the thumb and bringing it up. If you don't master hanging the arm weight right from the get-go, this is okay as we're first trying to find the correct position for the bow hold. We'll work on it a little bit more as the tone series progresses. Now that we've found a relaxed bow hold for your hand, it's time to increase the flexibility and solidarity of the bow hold. In order to do this, I'm going to teach you an exercise I call rabbits. I'll demonstrate the exercise from beginning to end, and I'll explain each part. Rabbit, bite, 2, 3, 4, 5, house, flexibility, tap, 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 hugs, 2, 3, 4, 5. The first part of this exercise is designed to help us find the center of our bow hold, which is the opposing force between the thumb and the middle finger. In order to do this, we remove all the fingers except for the thumb and the middle finger, and while you do this, make sure to maintain the shape of the hand. It will be tempting to change the shape. An important thing to help this is to make sure you're holding the bow with this hand and allowing the weight to rest there. In this position, I want you to gently pinch the bow 5 times. And when you do this, make sure that you're not actually gripping the bow inward with your middle finger, but that it's just an opposing force on top of the stick between the thumb and the middle finger. You're going to gently pinch it 5 times, and more important than pinching it tightly is the feeling of release afterwards. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Each time after you pinch, you should feel a feeling of release and ease. And this is to reinforce the feeling that we don't have to grip on tightly, but also that this is the center of the bow hold. After this, we do house, which is returning the fingers onto the bow in a gentle way. And then flexibility, which is just moving the wrist and fingers a little bit, just to ensure that all of the knuckles and the wrist are staying loose and flexible and not over gripping. After that, we tap the index finger twice, and we tap the pinky twice, with a similar goal of making sure that we're not clenching. After that, we do 5 hugs, which should not be 5 strangles. They should be very gentle and the release should be more important than the squeeze. Just like with the rabbits, we don't want to grip the bow inward like this. Instead, we want to feel counter pressure from the fingers on top of the stick and the thumb. Hugs, 2, 3, 4, 5. One more demonstration of the whole exercise all the way through. Rabbit, bite, 2, 3, 4, 5. House, flexibility, tap, 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 tap. Hugs, 2, 3, 4, 5. These I would recommend doing 20 times a day until you get very comfortable with them, and then maybe moving down to about 10 times a day. It won't be long before you get into a nice flow with these, and it should only take you about 30 seconds. So to recap, in this video, we've discussed the foundations of what creates good tone. It begins with being able to find the bow hold. And more important than how many times you do it is that every time you do it, you do it correctly. I cannot overemphasize enough how important it is to do these correctly in order to get into good habits. Forming good habits is so much easier than trying to unlearn bad habits and replace them with new ones. After that, we discussed rabbits, a way of reinforcing the bow hold and finding greater flexibility and stability in the right hand. These I would recommend doing 20 times a day until you get very comfortable with them, and then maybe moving down to about 10 times a day. After you master these exercises, be sure to check out my next video where we talk about applying these to the string and starting to pull out a clear sound.